We have soared through 9 different incredible episodes of The Amazing World of Gumball, and everything leads into this moment here. Armada, strap in, because this is a double feature. Similar to The Parents and The Limit, the Watterson family is dragged outside for some errands, only to drag their feet. Unlike those times, we get an interpolation of the ending theme.
Saturdays are cool, cause we don't go to school, and I am gonna buy some donkey drool.
I don't know what that word face is for, Nicole. Gumball could have said moose drool, and now this entire episode would have been taken down for referencing alcohol. However, the happy faces of the family are only foreshadowing the twist to come.
Be careful with this universal remote. It has a power only a fool would not fear. Tell me, for what will you use it?
Oh, you know, TVs, DVD players. Vengeance!
No, it cannot be used for evil. Give it back.
Go back off, old man!
For those who don't know, this is a van named The Awesome Store. It has held multiple items such as the CN Notebook, a Game Child, Darwin, among many other items. Now, the owner of this van sells a remote that can alter reality and decides to only ask the intent of the buyer after they have their hands on the remote. You kind of deserve everything that's coming to you after this. My question to all of you watching, could there have been another way for this exchange to go down? Because I don't think so.
There's no bad guy here. You could be our mortal enemy.
Where Molly was frozen in time, not even aware that a year has passed between her last interactions with society, Rob witnessed the lack of a rescue because he was that forgettable, clutching onto the one opportunity he has to re-enter society, forging his own destiny, and creating this persona as the villain, to which Gumball unintentionally, mockingly promotes the idea, thinking of it as a fun side thing that he can do, contrasted against the fact that this character shifted their entire life, look, and personality to fit this narrative. It is important to note that between the Void, an episode that this recap borrows heavily from, we'd have the Nobody, the Nemesis, and the Bus, 3 episodes in which Rob would slowly make strides to make Gumball's life a nightmare. Well, 4th time's the charm, right?
You turned me into the villain Gumball Watterson. You left me with this broken body. You gave me this ridiculous voice. Well, now
I am in control. And the time has come for you to pay.
Rob is like the weird people who play Sims and box people in a room with no doors, light it on fire, and watch their creation flail around helplessly for entertainment. Some may say that's an over-exaggeration, but they would be wrong. For Rob to be taken seriously as a villain, he'd need to pose as some kind of threat, and he plans to do that immediately. As Gumball goes for his DJ solo, messing with the car windows, Rob crashes all of the cars into the Watterson bucket, and surprisingly, no one is hurt.
This is gonna cost a fortune. Do you think money grows on trees? Or I guess it does because it's made of paper, but that's not the point.
Rob starts with a strong jab, tearing apart his relationship with Darwin via very hurtful captions.
If we hadn't adopted him, we would have enough money.
Are you serious?
What better way to drive a wedge than to tackle the adoption angle? Yes, the Watterson family were unaware that they've adopted a fish that can speak and later on walk and basically become a second child, and it would be the lowest of low blows to bring this up as a way to save money when Gumball's allowance was cut because of his own actions. As far as he's aware, this cuts deep into Gumball as well, who treaded this territory before in the... What? Treaded isn't a word? Well then what's the past tense of tread? Trod? Who would ever say trod? This cuts into Gumball as well, who trod this territory before in the words, where in a fit of rage claimed that Darwin was not his brother but just a fish who grew legs, and it was hurtful enough to send Darwin into tears. He didn't mean it then, and he definitely doesn't mean it now.
It's time for you to lose your parents. Parental filter off.
Sorry kids, could you just cover your ears for a sec? Your mother and I have come to an agreement. I'm getting a donut and she's getting a better husband.
What?
The second deep cut, witnessing your parents' divorce after seemingly years of a comforting, functional bond. You can say a lot of things about Nicole, Richard, or even a relationship, but you couldn't say that it made their children uncomfortable about either of them. In fact, it was actually quite intentional to speak about the choices before this video so that you understood that this relationship of flower just growing out of the cracks of the concrete, a literal shot in the dark, unintended but a fat chance, ended up not just working, but being admired by fans worldwide, only to be ripped apart in vengeance by a digital puppet master. However, familial ties aren't the only ones to be ripped here.
I'm I know there's no way to make this look okay, but I'm gonna try anyway.
I did warn you. I said I would destroy you and everyone you love.
The mood here is literally perfect, with Rob coming out of the crowd as the only one not affected by the remote, adding insult to injury by ripping the symbolic representation of a tightly knit family after systematically ripping apart the actual bond, but also coming through on his promises, and all it took was the ability to alter reality. His last few attempts were seen as feeble, comedic, just something to have a fun, whatever 11-minute episode with, but this? No one has gone this far. It is a complete masterclass on how to build a threatening Cartoon Network villain overnight. And even despite all of the trauma he has caused to Gumball, Gumball still commits the cardinal sin. The only reason we're still here today. He can't remember Rob.
It was you who did all this! My arch nemesis, Roy.
No, my name isn't. My name is Rob, gosh darn it!
Now, some may chalk this up to Gumball's general forgetfulness or even that he possibly can't think straight after the day he's had, but even then, how many times has he had the opportunity to get it right and he never does? This has been a long time coming, and Rob will explain exactly why, but in the right atmosphere.
You have only yourself to blame. You being the hero of all this means that I have to be the villain. But I never wanted to be the villain!
What are you talking about?
You really don't get it, do you? So happy to star in your amazing world. Can't you see that none of this is real?
I don't understand.
It doesn't matter.
So a long time ago, I did a versus with Teen Titans Go and the Angry Beavers, and the episode or audio I spoke about when it came to the Angry Beavers was Bye Bye Beaver. The entire audio adventure revolved around Dag and Norb getting the news that they're being cancelled, with Dag specifically coming to the realization that he is not a real-life beaver, but a beaver within a cartoon.
I've never told you this before because I was afraid your tiny enfeebled mind couldn't combobulate it. We are a cartoon.
This episode never ended up being produced despite Nickelodeon originally approving the concept, but I feel like for modern standards, this is probably as close as you'll get to a show for kids explicitly admitting that it is a cartoon, and it's quite clever in its workaround because Gumball never says it and Rob never spells it out, but you can tell that Rob was, as the cool kids say, red-pilled, and allowed a sobering reality that the source of his problems has to do with the main character of this so-called amazing world. How can they top this? Well, with a fight, of course, and what a well-choreographed fight. Again, for a serialized comedy show, you've made it both easy to take seriously but easy to laugh at, which is a tightrope that other shows struggle at. Just take a look at how many buttons of the remote become the source for a wide variety of excitement, and even death.
Ha! In your face!
Now one may ask, why doesn't Rob just use the power button on Gumball? Because it was never about destroying Gumball, it was about gaining respect and importance. He originally wanted to do that by being the sidekick for the good guy, and was forced to take it via fear and malice by being the bad guy. If it was about powering off Gumball, he would have done that while Gumball was in the car. It would have been the cleanest kill ever. But with hate comes other feelings, and it's very clear that Rob's hatred of Gumball is fueled by Rob's inability to get past the fact that his reputation is of someone who was boring and forgettable. In his mind, to get that feeling of being important, he must get rid of the most important person ever and take their place. And he almost gets away with it.
Time to eject you, once and for all.
The batteries are dead! What now?
Well, I guess you're gonna do what any hero would do to save the ones he loves. You're gonna follow the remote.
We now know that there were 2 more seasons of Gumball to come after this, so Gumball clearly wasn't destroyed and Rob doesn't live evilly ever after. Rob's fatal flaw was throwing the remote. By throwing the remote, he gives Gumball the solution to solve all of this, which leads into the events of the rerun, which follows similarly to the episode The Oracle, coincidentally, another important episode in the lore of the Void, in which Gumball tries his best to stop fate, knowing of his future and wanting to change it. For such a scary place, we're almost always just in and out of it, leaving a lot of questions about how it works left up in the air. Will Gumball be able to stop fate, or will he make things even worse? Now, I might be a bit of a rambler, but one thing I do enjoy nowadays is removing redundancy. Could the Disaster and The Rerun work better as a 22-minute special or even an 11-minute episode? No. To have the Disaster end and then go into another episode, in this case the Rerun, solidifies that perspective because Rob is trying to fight for relevance within these 11-minute chunks. Had this have been a 22-minute special, it would still work, admittedly not as much, but it would have lost that added detail that you are watching an in-universe character try to battle their way out of feeling like a minor character in a TV show. Also, you get to see the intro again.
Stop it with your yawning, it's a lovely morning.
We're off to buy some stuff at the Elmore Mall.
Wait, I know what comes next. Weekends always rule. We're gonna milk a mule. No.
The Rerun has the same structure as the Disaster except with hindsight, which for Gumball is not 2020. Now, even though I do consider these episodes all-time greats, I do find it very odd that the direction they went with the Rerun is that Gumball mostly changes the timeline, but then occasionally follows it, when during his flashback or flash forward, he knows for sure that he needs the universal remote. There is no mystery in the Rerun, there shouldn't be any. And I'll show you what I mean when it comes up.
Go left forward, right forward, back to the store where you bought it and ask for a refund.
You really can tell the future.
Yes, and things are about to get...
No! Whatever you say could alter the future in some terrible way.
Eesh, a little pessimistic there, don't you think, Darwin? Now, for the purposes of this episode, he is right. The changes Gumball tries to make to prevent Rob from destroying his family result in Rob destroying his family in an emotionally worse way. You see this the best where Darwin doesn't want to hear what Gumball is saying, but is more happy to read it and react to it. What happened to not learning about the future because it may change in a negative way?
How about we get some donuts?
Oh, whatever.
But I...
Now, if you remember from the Disaster, the second deep cut was watching Nicole and Richard go through a divorce in real time. Somehow they've managed to make it worse here. Now, I'm a big fan of the multiverse theory. I'd like to believe that time is not bound to a linear logistical line, but rather an infinite amount of iterative and theoretical lines that could exist. A universe where Nicole and Richard biologically age down, but because they already had kids in the canonical timeline, no one else has to biologically age down. But in this story, not only does Anais age down into essentially nothing, but so does Darwin. At least with the prior future, all of these people were alive, torn apart, but alive. In the way that Gumball didn't feel the need to take this situation seriously because he's not the type to learn ahead of time of what not to do, he had to learn the hard way. And this is one of the most brutal, crushing realities he's had to face within this. Speaking of face, I love that face that Gumball has when turning all of his anger and frustrations towards Rob. And side note, it is a lovely detail that Leslie is the shocked face to see Penny's literal downfall.
Poor little me, blah, blah, blah. You never wanted to be the villain, yada, yada. I made you this way, etc., etc.
I was looking forward to telling you all that.
There's no point, we've already had this fight.
Alright, so earlier I was talking about how Gumball follows the timeline sometimes and it's kind of weird and confusing. Well, that's this moment here. If you had the fight, why not use that to your advantage? Why be so reactionary when you have the element of hindsight? That is just something I don't understand within the Rerun. He knows the source of Rob's power is the universal remote, and yet we have another fight. Granted, visually this is a stellar fight as well, utilizing more of the buttons on the remote and incorporating these real-world filters into the fight in a creative and engaging way. But I can't help but feel like someone who knows how to counter a fight he's only had once with one hand shouldn't be going through the motions after what he's experienced. However, he does prevail and send Rob into the void, celebrating his win with a little dance. I am curious though, if Gumball presses rewind on everything, will he keep the remote because the person holding the remote is not affected by the time warping? Or is the void not affected by time warping? I would imagine not, because in the Disaster, Rob went back in time and saw his previous self, which indicates that the void operates on a different timeline, but then I would imagine it has to, because at the end of the Disaster, Gumball rewinds time, which leads into the events of the Rerun, and... okay, this got way too deep.
I have to save him! And I don't have much time!
It seems you've run out of luck.
Not quite!
And fingers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dagnabbit!
I can't. What am I gonna do?
Whatever outside. Please do it fast.
Rob is a character who we don't see receive that much attention or care, which is why we ended up in the void in the first place. To have his greatest adversary go out of his way to not only save him, but at the detriment of himself, makes Rob feel uneasy. What would he do next no more? What would be his role? In fact, when looking at the Inquisition now, Rob wanting to turn everyone into live-action versions to help them keep up with the times was actually supposed to be a net positive for everyone. And ironically, Cartoon Network is actually the worst network to use this example with compared to Nick and Disney, because the latter two actually have a successful line of live-action shows, but the goal was to keep them on the air. Rob is definitely not a good guy, but in order to become a star, he needed the universe to continue. Getting back to this, Rob actually comes away from this entire ordeal not wanting to be Gumball's nemesis anymore.
I look forward to being your enemy again in the future.
Huh. Me too.
And thus breaking the universal remote.
This is too dangerous.
That remote was $12.99.
The universal remote was only $12? Now you may think this concludes the search for the best, search for the worst. There is one final video that must be done, and it'll be the grand finale I've been building up to.